Finally got one. I've been trying to get my hands on one of these for a while. I did a bunch of research a while ago and determined that it is the best floor jack to put in the back of the Lexus for a couple reasons. Mainly this reason right here. It goes from 6 1/4 all the way up to 29 1/16 inches. It's got a lot of range, basically. It comes with an extension, which I'll show you. You do have to bolt on, which is kind of goofy, but fine. But it's got big tires, so it can roll over zip ties. It's got a skid plate, some other off-roady type features. So let me go ahead and open it up. Oh, it's also got a cool thing where this locks down. The only other real competition for this is to make your own off-road jack or buy one of the Eagle ones, which are twice as expensive and doesn't have as much lift range. When you're off-road, you don't have a nice set of jack stands. That lift range is key. I've been using this Bandland jack for an eternity now, and it's been awesome, so why not buy another one? This old 3-ton's been great. As you can see, I've got an extension on there, a custom one. But anyways, let's go ahead and unbox this thing, test it out, and then I'll show you guys my spreadsheet. I know we all love spreadsheets. Oh, so, okay, some assembly required. Okay, all right, I see you. Let's go ahead and, that's part of the extension. Pretty thick. The one I have on that jack is a little beefier. But this extension stows really nicely. There's a spot to mount it on the jack. These wheels are serious. Ball bearings, sealed ball bearings on a jack. Holy crap, that's cool. Yep, you got 4 wheels, that's good. This little mechanism right here is what mounts this extension to the jack, so I'll show you that once we get that assembled. And then here's the bottom of the base. Like I said, a little goofy. Not sure what those 2 holes are for, but it's got these big bolts that thread into the top of the jack. That one over there just has one big hex in the center that goes into the jack. And zoom out. Ta-da! So it's a pretty premium materials, meaning that it's the cheapest Chinese aluminum you can get. So I guess it's kind of a hybrid jack, but I think it's mostly aluminum. Look at that skid plate action. That's pretty cool. So if you're in soft sand and stuff like that, jacking it up, it'll sink in a little bit, but it should hit the skid plate and then stop. This axle is huge. Very premium. So obviously I didn't read the instructions, but it's really simple. There really isn't much hardware. It's just a washer and a 3/4 19mm nylock nut on each wheel. Zip those on with the 1/4 inch impact. It's for this bracket that holds the extension, so we just need a, it's like number 4. So that's pretty simple. There's actually, the install is, the assembly is really not bad. About as easy as it gets. Cool, look at that. Pretty good breakover angle for a floor jack, tell you what. Yep, and then those 2 screws go right there. So I'm gonna go ahead and put that together now. All right, so I was just complaining a minute ago that you have to have a tool to install those, and that's kind of annoying. Well, they thought about that. There's storage for a big old Allen wrench with a ball end on it, so you can get on here and install this. That's pretty slick, and it bolts on like that. Thing sits down right here, and not only does it have a clamp, this screws into the base. I'm not going to want to use that feature because it makes the jack, I don't know, 2 inches higher at least when you have the spacer in there. So I'm probably going to store that in a different location to keep this thing as flat as possible to fit into a drawer system. But pretty snazzy. Also, look how easy that sucker rolls. I have never had a floor jack that wants to run away so badly. Alrighty, so a couple observations, not really complaints, but observations. Because there's a skid plate, when you drop bolts, they're gonna get caught in it. And I learned that real quick when I dropped the rubber stopper. You see it right there. The rubber stopper that holds this down in the box fell down in there, and it's kind of tricky to get out. So that's gonna be one thing that's gonna happen to me all the time. The skid plate's not too hard to remove, obviously, but slightly annoying there. This handle's aluminum, which is nice, saves some weight. My other jacket's all steel. All the way up, this lift mechanism down here is contacting this pin. I don't know if that's really on purpose. I think this pin is just to stiffen up these two sides. It's just a spacer with two little hex bolts. So if they had to move that forward a little bit, which I could obviously do by drilling 2 holes, maybe you could lift it a little bit higher. I don't know. But that's about as high as you want to go anyways. If you look at that, it's pretty maxed out. But now it's locked. And what that means is you can make your jack pop a wheelie to get over obstacles. You can push it easier. It's a lot easier to roll around with that lock feature. Now, I guess I better lift something with it, right? So back of the GX right under the hitch. And that feels really good. Not a whole lot of force required. And it's going up. My other jack is getting a little tired, so it's nice to have a brand new jack. So this is the one thing that doesn't feel super premium. You can see that it's eating into the aluminum a little bit when I'm operating it. It just didn't quite make it right. It squeezed a little bit too much. I think if I went in here with a pry bar and opened that up a little bit, it'd probably work just fine. But as it is there, you can see that it's digging into the aluminum and it's hanging up, which is why I had to hit it down to get it to engage. See, it's not engaging itself. So I'm gonna go ahead and see if I can fix that right now. But that, I took my snap-on pry bar, I mean screwdriver, and I went in here and I pried it this way, and then I went over here and pried it this way, and now you can see that it's a lot looser, and when I put it to here, boom, it snaps into place like it should. So that was an easy fix, but could have been better. They did grease it well. You can see there's plenty of grease in there. It's just that this piece was pinched too tightly. So now it's time to add a second notch 90 degrees so that when I get this sucker down to here, it'll lock in and hold itself. Well, there you have it, guys. It's not super pretty, but it works great. So I added a second notch. Now it locks at 90 degrees. I'm gonna go ahead and square it up a little bit. That was my first attempt at it. But yeah, it works good. Now I don't have to worry about losing that little plastic piece and fighting with that to get in here. Just used a mini grinder with a cutoff wheel, took the wheel off to get access to it. Again, just one nut, so pretty quick to do, and just kind of auged it out, and now we can pull this, and we're back in jack mode. Should have come like that from the factory. Well, maybe a little prettier than that, but something like that. A pretty good manual with a nice exploded view. I am mostly putting this in the video, so when I lose this manual, I can watch my video, and I'll have this documented. Yeah, pretty nice. We're gonna go ahead and weigh it now and see what it actually weighs fully assembled. It went ahead and put the extension on. Very sweet, easy to put the extension on with the included mounted hex. Jack has so much ground clearance, I actually had to put a spacer on the scale, and I've already zeroed it with the spacer, and it comes out to 72 pounds. So let's see how that compares with the specs. I'm pretty sure that was fairly close. Overall, I'm really happy with this jack so far. We got to get it muddy and put it in some sand and see how long all the seals and stuff last. But the build quality feels pretty good for a Chinesium off-road floor jack. All right, so all the weights on the scale. This one does not need a block. 110 pounds, 109.9. That's a pretty big difference. All right, here's a little side-by-side comparison. Let me line up the front axles. So pretty similar in length. This one's trying to roll away because his bearings are so good. This one's definitely wider, more stability there. The body of the jack, this is a high performance, so it goes a lot more low profile. Get underneath lower cars and stuff. This thing just looks way more beefy because everything's thicker because it's aluminum. This thing's all steel. So let's put them both all the way up and do a comparison like that as well. This will take way fewer pumps, I'm certain. It's just half stroking it, you know. I may end up swapping that extension onto this jack because it's just beefier, and I think it'll swap, but we'll see. Haven't tried that yet. This thing is 5 years old, but still works pretty good. Never serviced it or added oil to it, and it has been used off-road a few times, which it's obviously 100% not rated for. Yeah, it gets a little weak once I get to there. That's all she wants to go. So you can see that this old school, I say old school, my old jack does go higher than this off-road one, significantly higher. And that's because it's got a much longer arm. If you look at where this arm mounts, this pivot's pretty far from the back axle, whereas that pivot is very close to the back axle. So it's got a longer arm. It also extends a little farther forward. But this bear is extremely heavy and is miserable to drag around in grass or gravel, let alone sand. So obviously everyone talks about these Pro Eagle jacks, and I started looking into them. They do seem like they're pretty well made. They've got some good reviews, and they're fairly light for the lift height you get. They come with a factory extension on them, which is great. I had to get a custom one made for my jack I have now to lift up things like my Talon on 8-inch portals. But their marketing and their website's pretty annoying. And let me show you what I mean by that. So the most important thing with the floor jack isn't so much the maximum lift height, it's the travel. How much can it lift in one time of stroking it without resetting, right? Because if you can only lift something 4 inches, you got to lift it up 4 inches, put a jack stand, put another block, etc. You don't want to be doing that, especially not off-road. And what I found is that their jacks really don't have that much travel. And they don't advertise the travel on here. They're kind of sneaky about that. And you got to kind of like read through these long descriptions to figure it out. So if you read right here, it says that it's good for 1 foot 10 inches of lift. But if you read down here, the same jack is now only good for 1 foot 9 inches. That's confusing. And then yeah, they sell a taller spacer on them. Anyways, it all got really confusing, so I made an Excel file like I always do. So if you look at this file right here, it goes through and looks at all the jacks that I was considering, and it has the travel calculated. And I actually had to watch some YouTube videos and a bunch of stuff like that to get true numbers for some of these because Pro Eagle's kind of all over the place with how they tell you the numbers. What I ended up finding out was that Bandland's Harbor Freight has an off-road jack now that totally smokes all of these much more expensive ones by the price, if nothing else. It's half the price of the equivalent Pro Eagle. I also looked at like the cheaper aluminum Pittsburgh and Daytona jacks. Ones that have X's next to them were ones that were really easy to rule out. All of these are easy to rule out for the price, but also 9 inches of travel. That's not enough to jack up my Talon. It's got too much down travel. It could barely jack up the back of my GX460 from the hitch if I wanted to do some suspension work. So definitely not getting anything with 9 inches of travel. 12 inches of travel is a little more respectable, but you really want around 14. So the only Pro Eagle I would consider is the 3-ton. So this one over here is tonnage. And it goes up to 28 inches with their 8-inch extension, and then it goes up to 35 inches with their 15-inch extension, which is going to be pretty wobbly. But the Harbor Freight Badlands jack goes up to 28.5 with their supplied extension, and it's got 14.7 to 5 inches of travel. And I verified this with some YouTube videos of people actually using the jacks and taking some measurements. So that's almost in 3/4 inch more travel than the Pro Eagle for half the price. And it's also got some more useful features. So I'm going to go with the Badlands, but I thought this chart might be useful to you guys. It is pretty heavy. I think they mixed up their shipping weight and product weight because shipping weight should always be more.